Ukraine becomes a tool in Europe's internal struggles. The hit to Hungary and Slovakia through the Druzhba pipeline marks the beginning of an open high-level conflict within the EU. In essence, these are hidden sanctions against two EU members, executed through the proxy of Ukraine. For years, Kyiv has exploited the notion of energy blackmail by Russia. This notion once led to the unprecedented decision to reverse the flow of Ukraine's gas transportation system. Profits from gas trade were redirected from the state company Naftogaz of Ukraine to numerous gas traders who supplied molecule-free Russian gas from the EU back to Ukraine. Under the same banner, the deliberately unpromising Odessa-Brody oil pipeline was built in the early 2000s, with the aim of supplying alternative Azeri oil from Russia to Europe. Similarly, in 2010, the Pridneprovsk main oil pipelines were reversed, crippling the Russian-owned oil refineries in Odessa and Kherson while benefiting the well-known oligarch Iachir Kolomoiskyi, who seized control of Ukraine's largest refinery in Kremenchuk from the state and Russian company Tatneft. Ukraine's once cohesive energy system was systematically and deliberately dismantled. Now comes the final twist. Ukraine itself has imposed sanctions on Lukoil, leading to the cessation of oil transit through the Druzhba pipeline. At the other end, this oil was supplied to Hungary and Slovakia, which are currently unfriendly to the Ukrainian government. Lukoil's oil was processed at two refineries owned by the Hungarian oil and gas company MOL, the Danube refinery in Budapest and Slovnaft in Bratislava. While Druzhba, which delivered 4.5 million tons of oil annually, was not the only supply route, an alternative route exists through Croatia. The processing at these two key refineries has significantly decreased, causing dissatisfaction for Viktor Orban and Robert Fico. The reduction in oil processing volumes not only contributes to rising fuel prices in these countries but also impacts their budgets. Hungary imposes a special tax on oil delivered via Druzhba. Relations between Kyiv and Budapest have been far from smooth. Both Orban and Fico advocate for a peaceful resolution of the conflict in Ukraine, considering the current realities, which irritates Zelensky's team, whose power tenuously rests on militaristic fervor and expectations of new counter-offensives. However, a direct blow to the economies of neighboring states does not benefit Kyiv. On the contrary, it portends significant problems for Ukraine itself. Currently, more than 40% of Ukraine's electricity deficit is covered by imports from Hungary. Additionally, a tenth of Ukraine's diesel needs are met by supplies from Slovnaft. The transit of Russian oil through Druzhba also brought over $90 million annually to Ukraine's budget. For Ukraine's economy, which has fully transitioned to life support in the form of Western aid, this money is not crucial. However, Budapest, in response to the transit blockade, withheld a much larger tranche from Kyiv, €6.5 billion from the European Peace Fund, intended for the needs of Ukraine's armed forces. The actions of the Ukrainian government primarily hurt Ukraine itself, behavior that is hard to rationalize. Therefore, the decision to block oil transit was likely made not in Kyiv but in Brussels. It was made after Viktor Orban's visit to Kyiv and the subsequent visit of the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. In both cases, discussions involved an alternative plan for resolving the conflict in Ukraine, known as Peace Plan 3.0, presented by Orban and the Vatican first in Kyiv and Moscow, and then in Beijing and Washington. Everywhere except Brussels, which continues to tout support for Zelensky's formula. It is likely that Ukraine acted merely as a tool in the internal elite struggles within the EU. The EU's bureaucratic machine has a limited set of sticks and carrots to keep Orban and Fico in line. Kyiv, on the other hand, is ready to undertake any action, no matter how self-destructive, at the behest of its donors, on whom it is completely dependent. This is especially relevant considering the anticipated victory of Trump in the US elections, which could shift much of Ukraine's financial burden from the US to the EU. Discipline within the EU has faltered due to the defiance of Hungary and Slovakia. This defiance by two relatively small member states has been somewhat supported by the Vatican, which seeks to become a center of conservative forces in Europe. The hit to Hungary and Slovakia via Druzhba marks the beginning of an open high-level conflict within the EU. Essentially, These are hidden sanctions against 2 EU members, using Ukraine as a proxy. The expected results of these sanctions are increased economic and social problems in Hungary and Slovakia, followed by Maidans to oust Orban and Fico from their positions. Still European, but no longer united.